in blood diamonds, rhyming, brainwashing with BPM, MK Ultra timing. Projects I'm on top, get ready for the onslaught. Murder with the music, deep my lines are the mob. Too much ballin', too much hustling, too much swag, too much ignorance, you shouldn't even brag. Too much biting, rappers must be mad. Misguiding the youth, you rappers are sad. Too much ballin', too much hustling, too much swag. From Superman to man, all y'all can go to hell. All the super villains call Man of Steel Kal-El. If you still miss it, you're dumber than I thought, fam. Dumber than Dumb and Dumber. Can't stand a rapping handyman. Alright, Moors, Islam.
Sit down.
Islam. We're just gonna start off with a reading by the Prophet called Prophet Joali Speaks to the Nations. If you have race pride and love your race, join the Moorish Science Temple of America and become part of this divine movement. Then you will have power to redeem your race, because you will know who you are and your forefathers were. Because where there is unity, there is strength. Together we stand, divided we fall. Come, good people, because I, the prophet sent to redeem this nation from mental slavery, which you have now, need every one of you who think your condition can be better. This is a field open to strong men and women to uplift the nation and take your place in the affairs of men. If the Europeans and other nations are helping me, why not you? It is your problem. The Negro problem is being solved only as it can, and that is by the Moorish divine and national movement. If you have a nation, you must have a free national name in order to be recognized by this nation as an American citizen. This is what is meant when it is said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you. So this is just a call out to everybody in attendance to let the people of Toronto know when you're out there talking to them, let them know that they have a regency or a consulate. We don't call it an embassy, because embassies are only on foreign soil. And then this isn't foreign soil, this is our own soil. So if we call it an embassy, then we do disservice to what it actually is, right? So just remember that it's a consulate or it's a regency, right? Secondly, today's presentation is by a good brother of mine. We probably met about 7 years ago when we saw this lecture on YouTube called Confessions of a BET Producer. So everybody remembers.
He came to the Marcus Garvey.
Yeah, he got the Marcus Garvey Center, right?
I remember you came to the Marcus Garvey Center.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, you know what's funny? I didn't know I was still on, yo, my bad. The white man's basketball, my chick, I know I'm still on. There you go. My fault, y'all. White man had me for a second. Now go ahead.
Right.
I didn't know I was on.
It's all good, right? So when we did this lecture, right, it was because of this presentation that the brother did Confessions of a BET Producer. So if you remember, when the big hype in Toronto when BET just came out, right? Rap City and all that, right? And you used to get all those good videos before they started playing all the crap, right? This was the man that was playing all the videos that you loved to watch, right? So when we brought him up here, it was kind of just, to introduce him to the family, and there were multiple people at the event that he did. I think Rudro was here, Shango was here.
Yeah,
there was a few. Oh yeah, Adam Ashanti.
Yeah.
Adam Ashanti and her father, right? So, to bring us up to date as to why the Moors are doing this presentation, right? Now we all know about Professor Griff, Black Dot, Asir, the usuals that do the hip hop lectures, and it's been no fault of his own that he's kind of in the background, right? When David Farrell is one of the people that should be used more as an example to push the idea of hip hop, because he was actually in it. Like, he was in the industry seeing all this craziness that we're witnessing today. He saw the inception of all this craziness about to happen, about to kick off. Right? Again, you know, I heard Black Dot talk about the Moors, and he talks about the Moors on his album and all that. I haven't heard Griff talk about the Moors too much. And then I know David Farrell, he has his nationality, he's the L. Right? So he's on the science. It's not like he's an outsider to the Moorish movement. Right? In 1989, Heavy D and the Boys put out a single called They're Doing Their Own Thing. You know, we got our own thing. Right? The cover of the single for that was this cover right here. Right? Let me just, you know, I know you probably seen this already, but you know. Right?
Yeah.
They're doing their own thing. And they have fezzes on. Kente fezzes. This is 1989. So since 1989, certain people have been pushing the message that, you know, we need to do our own thing. Forget about other people controlling our media and all that stuff. How about we control our own stuff? But we didn't pay attention to that, right? We got caught up in the money and the cars and the house, and then now it's pretty much like we lost everything when we look out there at the hip-hop industry, right? So the brother requested that if we got, you know, that we keep it family oriented and you ask questions. So everybody up here has a history of BET, right? We've seen it, it's come here, it's been here, and it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. And the conditions of our young people, ever since this thing came into Toronto, our condition of our young people has only gotten worse. Because of this station that people uphold, and people want to go watch that, and they're rushing home to go watch all these shows. So, want to ask the family to, let's get a round of applause, and let's open our ears and our minds and our hearts for a good brother, David Farrell.
Islam.
Did everybody hear me?
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, a brief introduction. My name is David K. Farrell. I was known as D. Brad in the music entertainment industry. And what's interesting about Toronto is I actually have a tie-in with Toronto because I was the one who visually pushed a lot of Little X's videos. Who's from, I'm sure, are you all familiar with who he is?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm sure you are.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. Little X was, him and I actually had a very good rapport. He backed a project of mine, but when I went through being, going through the trials and rituals at BET, that rapport was destroyed. And to this day, him and I haven't spoken in years, and he doesn't know what happened. But, so that's my little personal time with Toronto. I started my career interning for MTV and VH1, and I kind of reversed the trend. I learned at the feet of the white boy how they used symbology, mythology and symbolism to manipulate the masses, and they taught me a lot of what I realize are now secrets, but obviously being dark-skinned, they figured that I didn't know, I only knew but so much. So I really was basically the spook who sat by the door. Like, I had a plan the whole time I was there, and that was to get into that black station and take everything that those white people taught me that they used against black folks and reverse the psychology of it, which is what I did. Well, it wasn't what my intention was. It's just that that was usurped by the current president who's there because he also saw what I was trying to do. And I used I know a lot of times we hear brothers like Black Dot, my brother who has his books, I believe, the hip hop matrix, I believe it is. I may be off on the title.
Hip Hop Decoded.
We hear Professor Say that again?
Hip Hop Decoded.
Yes, Hip Hop Decoded. And he dealt with hip hop from a perspective of an esoteric perspective, dealing with the shockers. Then we had Griff, who Black Dot himself was a performer, and we had Griff, who we all enough said about what Griff and his situation. Where I differ from them and a lot of the other people that talk about hip hop is that I'm not dealing with conjecture, I'm not speculating, I'm not putting two and two together. I was there. I was with the wizard behind the curtain. I was the guy that they called and said, hey, those women are too dark. That was what started my downfall at BET, was I was like the only one that ever defended dark-skinned women. And I've had executives call me up and tell me, these women are too dark, they're too heavy set. I was there when the president began to push his very homosexual agenda. I was there, I watched. I watched when he walked in and told us how B2K was going to be the new big group, big R&B group. And even back then, everybody knew that there was a lot of pedophilia dealing with those children. I watched these things happen. I did my best to stop it, but I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to stop it. And that was the lesson that I learned. Unfortunately, it was going to, what we saw, what I saw is what has manifested itself today. I saw the homosexual agenda being pushed. I saw all of that. And it was being pushed because that's how it was within the station. When that new president came, he instituted a lot of what we hear about today. I mean, you were not getting a promotion within that station unless you were engaging yourself in some type of homoerotic behavior for the president. I just happened to be a known commodity before he got there, so I had the juice to kind of get away with that. Once I created that show called Spring Bling, and he began to make the station millions of dollars, I then became an asset to BET. And that's when the ritual started. That's when all of the savage-like attitude started. And the unfortunate part in America is that with the Moors who call themselves African Americans and black folks are very arrogant. When everybody, it appears, and this is what I always say to a lot of Moors from outside of America, and I may be wrong, and maybe there's a couple of you that are from the States that happen to have relocated to Toronto, but there's a lot of disinformation because when I was in the entertainment industry, the only brown people that I met that called themselves Moors were all light-skinned with light eyes. And they didn't use L's. They used L. I've never met a dark-skinned person that ever said I'm a Moor, but I can talk to you about 4 or 5 light-skinned, light-eyed people that call themselves Moors. Because at the time when I found out about my lineage on my father's side, being Washita, I started taking up calling myself a Moor, but I stopped because I had never met anyone from the Moor Science Temple, and the only Moors I met were like these jigs that I was looking at BET that didn't even really affiliate themselves with everybody else. So there's so much disinformation that goes on. So we may see Heavy D with the feds on, but you know what it was in America? We looked at it like, during that time was when we were very quote-unquote Afrocentric. So we just saw the kente cloth. We didn't know that there was a science. And Heavy D never came out and said there was a science behind that hat. So they made a lot of these entertainers that are brown may throw these symbols out, but they'll never come out and say, this is what it was all about. Because they're looking out for their careers. They're looking out for their comfort. And that's what we have in the States. The Civil Rights Movement was not about liberation. It was about assimilation and comfort. Everything that they fought for was not struggling to be free. It was all about inclusion. So in the States, we kind of get hit upside the head with the illusion of comfort. So, and assimilation. So that's what causes a lot of problems when it comes to hip hop, because I'm sure that any of you all I've studied a lot of the prophecies, and it was prophesied that the new religion in this day and age would be music. And the most powerful group of people on this planet are the Moors. But if these brown people who call themselves African Americans have no clue. They don't understand what it is that they were doing and what they are doing when they do it. So hip hop, where it is right now, and I know I'm probably speedballing through a lot of this, but where it is right now, maybe I'm being negative, but I think it's over. Like, as far as like the art form, we keep looking. I'm not a proponent of looking at Jay-Z and going, well, he made this song. Like, we forget that during times of antiquity, the entertainer was our jester. I'm bored, Jay-Z, come say a riddle to make me smile. And that's what he did. I'm bored, Denzel, come perform a scene so that I won't be bored anymore. My wife is upset, come crack some jokes, Jamie Foxx, so she'll laugh. We've turned around and started to worship the court jesters. And that's probably the worst thing that, from my experience, that can be done, because I've been next to some of these entertainers who give two craps about you, what you think, don't care. I've been in their homes, I've listened to the conversations. I know 85% of them are those who are more weak-minded. Everyone in that room right there is stronger mentally and spiritually than your favorite entertainer. I've seen it firsthand. And I tell people, if I took over America right now, I would put all of the weak-minded white people in certain positions of power that are only going to do what I tell them to do because they want to survive. That makes perfect sense. That's the art of war. And that's where we are right now. We're in the midst of it. And I say that, hip-hop, as far as the art form is over, but as far as where it spawned from, nothing has changed over here in America. So I wanted to get that out. I wanted to say that to people from outside of this country for a while, because there appears to be like a misconception that over here in the States that we have all of this knowledge and we should know. And I'm like, nah, because any bit of knowledge we get is trifled with. We don't ever get anything that's truthful. Now the knowledge is hidden, and then we dig it up, and it's the truth. No, by the time we get to it, someone else is trifled with it. People have trifled with the name of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali in the States. People have trifled with the name, with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's name. They will trifle with anything, and unfortunately, that's what we get a lot in the States. So that picture of Heavy D was right exactly everything that you spoke of, but the problem is, in the States, that was what was going through our Blackwash movement, as we call it. We ain't know anything about during that time about more science. So that's so on that note, that's dealing with the photo. And I would prefer if everyone got involved. That's why I stopped lecturing, because I hate standing and just talking. I don't think that what I have to say is so enlightening that no one else should get involved.
Great.
So I definitely would love audience participation, any ideas, any thought processes everyone has had. Like I said, I produced Rhapsody for 3 or 4 years. I moved from there to Chappelle's show. I was Dave stand-in, and I learned a lot from him. When he left and went to quote-unquote Africa, I knew he was leaving because he told me. I've also worked. I was part of the Emmy-nominated set design team for a show, Crowd for the Straight Guy, which is when American television, they really started pushing that homosexual agenda to the masses. So it's like I always ended up being on some show that was at the tip of what the new agenda was going to be in America, which is really interesting. And trying to make sure that I'm not breezing past anything else that's important that I think you should all know. Like visually, I put the person that visually, I didn't put the artist Eve out as far as her music, but introducing her when you guys will watch Rhapsody, and maybe if you watch 4 times a week, you saw it 3 times, that was me. And I was implementing the psychology of the average viewer. The more that they see something on television, the more likely they are to believe what they see. I use a lot of subliminal messages in her programming. I would send messages to my friends. I would spell their names out, or silly stuff like we were going to a club just for fun. I would spell the club out throughout the show. I would put hidden messages underneath the pictures. I would do all sorts of things because I thought it was funny. I didn't know that this was an actual science until I started to read more about psychology, the psychology of the human mind. And I started to learn more about people like Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, who was really the first person to institute that type of programming into American television. So the one thing I do reiterate to people is that a lot of things that we hear that we think are conspiracy, they're true because you talk to someone who's been through it. I've been through the rituals, the ritual of taking you out 3 times, everything's all white. I've been through all of that. It's just that for whatever reason, our bloodline was so strong that I never wavered. I always stood in my square, which is why, like, a lot of the stuff that I'm speaking of, that I speak of, technically speaking, I probably shouldn't be saying a word because most people don't. A lot of people are scared for their lives, which I don't understand why. But a lot of people don't say a word. And I understand in one sense because you lose everything financially. You do lose people that you are with your friends that aren't. And if you're not strong enough to deal with that, you really don't sit for yourself. That's why I don't badmouth a lot of the entertainers, and I don't spend my time telling people who's sleeping with who because I understand it. I don't condone it, but I understand. I happen to be raised with a father in the house who taught me what standard was and what, to the best visibility, what being a man was. So I always grew up knowing that I was a warrior and that even my death, if it was in the right situation, was honorable. So I always thought that we were supposed to go hard. I didn't know that you were supposed to sell out your whole, quote people. So when I was doing what I was doing, that was my mindset at the time. Yet I went through so much that I understand the person who believes in that world of entertainment, who believes that they have an American dream of buying their mother, who they watched their whole young life struggle, work 3-4 jobs, and they believe that that's the American dream of having a career. And then all of a sudden, a lot of us would never be right in a situation where you're standing there and it's like you're making 6, going on 7 figures almost, and someone's looking you dead in the face, like in that King James Bible where they speak about the Jesus on the mountain. That was like literally what happened to me. I was in a long white stretch limo, and I'm sitting there in between the vice president and another one of his henchmen, and they're telling me that I need to join them, literally. You need to come with us. I didn't get it because, my mentality in the industry was if I don't think I would hang with you in real life, I'm not gonna hang with you just because we work together. So those dudes were corny to me, so I would have hung with them anyway. So I didn't really understand where they were coming from until I made the decision to stand in my square and lost everything. And there is no one that's going to come and capture you. There is no one that's going to make your fall worse. The only thing that you can do is just stand strong. And everybody's not built for that. The average person is probably built for selling their soul more than they're built for standing up and going no. So I definitely don't go at the entertainers that do it because, their mother's taken care of. I had to sit and watch my parents struggle because I took this stand, knowing that if I had just, maybe didn't care too much about what those brown women on that screen look like. Maybe if I didn't care the message that we were sending to our babies, because no one else cared, everybody else got their money. And I was making more money than most of them who didn't care. And, there are times when I used to think about that. And it's difficult. So that's the one thing I will say is that, when we want to look at people and call sellouts, put yourself in the shoes and ask yourself how difficult it would be for you to do something that's your favorite, that you believe in, for someone else. Because if I did what I walked away, I didn't get fired. I told them to take their money and they could have it. But if I did what I did for the people, I would have committed suicide a long time ago. Because the people have not been there. There are individuals who have been there, and you have to be spiritually enough to know when you see the iron sheet coming through that are good. You have to be visually aware to be able to accept quality over the quantity. And most people aren't built like that. So I'm not going to sit here and sweet talk it was all good. I mean, I'm 40. I still have regular life to deal with. I still had a family to take care of. I lost my wife and everything. I'm a single father, 40 years old. Had to come back home and help my parents. That's not sweet. Meanwhile, there's cats out there that sold out and they living it up. But that's being my option if I just look at it one side. Because at the end of the day, I had to be able to wake up in the morning and look at myself in the mirror. And I'm very proud of myself and I'm very happy because of the people that I've met in my walk through all of it. It's not as cut and dry as Facebook and the YouTubers make it seem, you know, it's not as cut and dry. You know, that's why I caution a lot of times when we listen to people on YouTube, you should ask yourself who you're listening to. Because most of these guys talking would trade Jay-Z in a minute. Like, in a minute. They wouldn't think if they were allowed to do it. You know, there are very few that I've seen that I thought were earnest and generous and truthful. So the problem that we have nowadays, again, is that this art form, the music was taken over creatively, and I've seen white kids go in positions that are in positions of power creatively. The little industry secret hip-hop is that 75% of hip-hop CDs and music are downloaded by middle American white kids. So when Rick Ross bugs out and starts talking about whatever he said in that last song, and you see these African Americans all in the uproar, that's a facade, because the question shouldn't be looking at their communities. They should be asking these people, why you find that nonsense? Y'all get it, you know, so when you hear these rappers talking about my album with #1, all they're really saying is more people, more white like me than they like him. Because we're not buying that music. The Moors I know are buying that music. Half the African Americans I know ain't buying that music, are not buying Rick Ross. So who's buying all of this? But somehow it all falls in, when hip hop goes wrong, it falls in the lap of the indigenous people. And that's something, it's a lot more complicated than just boycotting of Rick Ross, because there's someone behind him that told him. So it's not okay for Rick Ross to crack a joke about slipping a mop to a female and taking advantage of it, but it's okay for Rick Ross to tell our babies to go out there and hustle and sell drugs. So wait a minute, where I'm coming from, like, I'm lost. Which is it? It's not okay for him to reflavor, say what he said about slipping that Molly and the girl drink and she didn't even know, but it's okay to lie and say that he's somebody that he wasn't. And it's okay for the public to accept it. But then when he shows no standards, now we have a problem. But I'm like, he never shows standards. How can it not be okay to call a Jew a kite and not be okay to crack a joke about raping a woman, but it's okay to tell little children that our babies that you can hustle as much crack as you want. You can be the snow man, you can do this, you can be the dope boy. But oh, wait a minute, you snuck a Molly in her drink, gone too far, you really have to rise up and boycott you. It's crazy. There's someone in charge, and I've had the privilege of standing next to who's in charge, who these rappers go to, who approve this. These rappers write no albums and then drop them. There's people that have to listen to these albums, and they don't know nothing like us. So at some point when it comes to hip hop, I think if we're really going to, everyone has to stop speaking to the man next to the man. It seems like the masses are scared to look at the man in his face. And we all know who that is, and nothing will ever be solved because it's not about us. When I was at BET, told us to target those 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. That's their demographic. And that's everyone's demographic. Children between the age of 9 and 16. But we sit around being arrogant and talking like we have all the answers, and meanwhile, those who are created this make a living, they're not even thinking about us. Once we reach past 16, we were already what we were going to be. And they're molding our children. And we seem in mass to be missing the point about all of this. I tell people all the time, your favorite artist can sit there and talk the most highest form of esoteric science in the world. Nas can come right up in this class with y'all. And probably y'all be impressed, like, wow, I didn't know he knew all of that. I've sat with Nas and listened to him. I've sat with Ghostface Killer. I've sat with a lot of these rappers and walked away like, yo, how are you in this industry doing what you're doing, but you know what you know? You know, they use it. Hey, Jay-Z, all the stuff that people talk about with Jay-Z, he knows all that occult stuff. He knows all of that. He was down with Malachi York at one time. Nas was down with Malachi York at one time. Outkast lived on, you understand, everybody, all these people know all of these signs. They know more signs. They know better science. They know now Valley science. They just choose to use it for their material benefit. So we're not even talking anything right now that every mainstream entertainer that we see doesn't know. I've sat with a lot of them and talked. I mean, even as simple as like a group like with Cam and Jim Jones and Jewels. I remember when I first was putting them on television and Cameron came to me and told me about this group called the Diplomat Set. That right now, that symbol is the American Eagle. In the very beginning, it was a Falcon of Haru. I remember that. Him and I talked, me and Cameron talked about it. It was a Falcon of Haru. They just changed it once they became hot. So everybody knows everything. It's just that they use it for themselves. These signs are strictly for self, and unfortunately, our children are paying the price. And at this point, I'd like to open the floor like for anyone that is there something that I didn't, a point that I didn't make, or are there any questions anyone has?
Yeah, I wanna, you were talking about the psychology. After you started studying the psychology.
Yes.
What could you speak on your perspective of what your job was and what it is now, but from a psychological aspect, like what, you know, like we can see what it's come out to, right? But what's the just speak on it a little bit.
I got you. One, here's the funny story. When I look back on my life, even before I was born, they knew who my family was. I'm gonna put it they. And even getting to that industry, I was given passes that you're not supposed to be given. And I used to always wonder why, when I was an intern, I would always be the only, and at the time, I would call myself black, black person around. I used to wonder these things. And then I found out that I was related to a brother named Michael G. Moy, who wrote Good Times, Jefferson, Different Straight, every one of those six facts of life, Silver Spoons. And they knew who I was. It was a problem of someone knowing your lineage and you don't know. The only difference with the king and the layman is that the king knows who he is. And so with me, they knew that's what I would do. It was like, and that's why I say it was a play on psychology, because the president of BET, like even something as simple as like, I watched wrestling, WWE wrestling. And I went to them years before it was really mainstream, this wrestling. I said, hey, this is wrestling. And the president knew that if he thought it was whack, that I would go and make it extra hot. So he would purposely tell me he thought something was whack, because he knew that I would bring in a ratings topping show. And 9 times out of 10, that show I would produce would be like the #1 rated show on BET that day. So even something as simple as that is a play on psychology. When you're of this program, especially in the States where we are, where it's in media, sports, religion, those are like the main, and politics, those are like the main 4 entities that shape this country. Everything is based on your psychology. Everything is based on, if I make this move, they're like playing triple level chess while the rest of us are playing checkers. And I discovered that later on, once I began to study more. And then, so that is why, where I am right now, what I do, although I still am involved in film and television, I teach performing arts in my township, because I get those children at the same age that they get them, except I live how I live. And that was my way of reversing the psychology. It was like, instead of being a dude that sat on YouTube and had a million lectures with that only grown people would watch anyway, I was like, well, maybe if I just live it out loud. So I claim my Moorish lineage, and I'll be on the middle of the in a subway in NYC and call it out, and no one ever questions me. Just so the children look, and I could be dead wrong sometimes about what I'm speaking about myself, but I'll tell anybody, prove me that I'm wrong, prove to me that I'm wrong. And after that, they can't, they'll sit down and shut up. But I found for me what works is that living and being in front of these children, so when I wear stones, they want to know why, so I explain to them the science of earth stones and how it deals with the human body. A lot of these young children do have, in America, where I'm at, in New Jersey, are familiar with our Moorish lineage, especially where I live in South Jersey. We're right near Moorestown. We're right near, we're an area called Lenape, Cherokee, Grand Cocon. So this is a very indigenous area. And this was a place that it was nothing but Moors where I'm at in southern New Jersey. And I'm sure if you guys came down, you would bug out like, are y'all serious? Like, this where I live was a very rich town. It just something happened, and it was all just us. So the children are aware of that. So for me, when I'm in my township, it allows me to attempt to reverse the process because, in particular, more or less for my daughter. I have a 4-year-old daughter will be 5 in a couple weeks, and that's why I wrote my book, because I realized that we wrote in stone and we were verbal, and this white boy writes in books and puts things on CDs. So I was like, let me write a book from my perspective so that I would forever be in his book of life, and no matter what happens, my daughter can always see what her dad thought. No one else could tell her my words. And I realized that that's why I pulled out of that conscious community in NYC, in New York, because I was like, I'd rather live it. And I get more pleasure walking down the street in a young crip, want to know why I dress the way I do and I act the way I act, than having 1,000 YouTube viewers and doing a lecture where I'm debating somebody over my principality. I've had the young hustlers on the block pick up my book and read it, and want to know what was what. I've had, I get all of that. So that's my way of dealing with the psychology of it, is that the children can see, like, I know this dude that he's out here with us, but he don't do the same things we do. My man is cool, and I think that has more of an impact. But that's just for me, though. Everyone else may do it differently. So I don't think my way is right for everyone. I just think my way is right for myself. Especially when I found out the psychology of things, that we live in a society, in particular in North America, that we have a microwave mentality, and a lot of times our subconscious will receive information that consciously we didn't even know we were getting. And then we begin to act certain ways and don't understand why we had the reaction that we had, or there's a lot of, I've heard of dealing with more science going on way back, when people were talking about the origins of humanity and extraterrestrials. Like, it's been crazy. Like, I was just watching something the other day that just bugged me out. That so it's like our children know about this. It's just that as they get older, we tend to put them in a situation where they're made to feel awkward. Even now, the time I have to deal with my daughter, unfortunately, her mother allows the whole God is good, God is great thing. So I have to figure out a way to teach this young child that's just that Bible, that it's a learning tool, no different than Dora the Explorer is to a certain extent. But that's just what, where we are, where I am in my life. So for me, dealing with this, I hope that answers your question. I may be talking in circles. Did that answer the question?
Somewhat, but also,
right.
Yeah. But
I'll talk. No, forgive me.
Also, from the aspect of them playing videos and things of that nature, the psychology from that perspective.
Got it. Okay. This is what I was taught. Here's what, back in 1998, I used to intern in the MTV building on 15, that's still on 1515 Broadway in New York City. And I interned for MTV Jam's Beach House. And every day at 4 o'clock, all the white producers would sit around the monitors on the 16th floor and watch Rap City. I didn't even watch BET like that when I was in college. So then one day I finally got up the courage and I asked them, I was like, I don't even watch BET. What's up? Why do y'all watch BET? They told me, then the main producer said, well, this is how we tell what rap videos that we're going to play on MTV, because we figure that if we see a video play on BET on regular rotation all the time, that in the black communities, that this must be what they're listening to. And I was like, wow. And another producer said, yeah, so then we take them and then, we decide which rapper would fit our audience. And because we do know, and then we can make them a star, because the audience will believe whatever they see on television. So the more that they see and entertain on television, the more that the person watching is liable to believe that that person is someone that they should spend money on. Which now, knowing what I know now, that all goes back to what is called the psychology of product placement, which was started by Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, who was a psychoanalyst. And I watched a documentary on this old man, and in the interview, he said, he was 90 at the time, he said that a few corporations called him in because they, back in the 20s and 30s in America, most people got what they needed. If you needed 2 pairs of shoes, that's what you got. And the corporation wanted to find a way to turn this country into a bunch of consumers. So, because of him being Sigmund Freud's nephew and being highly successful as a psychoanalyst, he was commissioned by the government and all of the major corporations to figure out a way to turn this country into people who get what the products that they need, into consumers. So they came up with the idea of what is called product placement, and they came up with the idea of bombarding the human subconsciousness with persistent imagery. And it was all almost like a joke at first, he said, until it started to work. And what happens is, I think we've all kind of been in a situation where there might be a song that you absolutely hate. Like I remember Will Smith had this song, Getting Jiggy With It. Hated the song. But at the job I had at the time, they would always play that song. Then I would go to the store, the song would be playing. And it got to the point that after a couple weeks of it coming out, as much as I hated it, I knew the lyrics. I knew the hook, Getting Jiggy With It. Now I would know the song. And actually would come on, and I would find myself subconsciously nodding my head to the song. On a conscious level, I thought I hated it, but because I heard it so much. So this is the science that they're using on our children every day, because they know that the children are more liable to sit down and watch this show. And I use that. So when I used it with Eve, I had Eve on Rap City every other day, probably. If I did 5 shows, if I produced 5 shows, Eve was on 4. And sure enough, people started believing her. Eve is not a dope MC. Eve hasn't had an album out in years, but she's still a star. Because it was embedded into the subconscious of the viewers of Rap City that, hey, this girl is hot. Hey, Cameron, Jim Jones, Joel, Dipset, they're hot. Hey, you know, this artist, that artist. And I can see it for the next 10 minutes and tell you artists that I did this science with, and it worked every time. Because the human psyche, I feel, is probably the most fragile substance in the universe. It can be molded and twisted and manipulated without the person who you're doing it to even knowing what you're doing. So it's really an easy process. It's easy. Just get up every day and do the same thing. That's a ritual. You do it ritualistically, you'll believe it. And that's what happens in film and television. So like even right now, the US has this thing with North Korea. Well, they just released G.I. Joe Retaliation, and if you see right in the middle of the movie, they said that this was going to happen. And, you know, so it's like what's called inception. Once the idea is planted in your head, you're really never going to forget. Like, we don't forget. Our brain does not forget anything. Everything that's happening right now, our brain is recording. So that's the science behind the Akashic Records, is our brain records everything. And the leaders of this modern society know that, and they've dumbed the masses down to such an extent that they don't know that. So the masses think that it's just them. The masses think that, you know, that their president has control. You understand? So they believe what they see on television hard about it. Like, they believe it. You know, this is a culture that the only thing that I could possibly do is just, I raise my daughter the way that those in power do. And I use mind control techniques the whole nine. It's just I do it for her benefit and not against her. Yet I understand what they do, and I would use the same tactics if I took over America, except I would just get rid of their families. Was that a little bit clear?
Yeah. Anybody got any questions, Brett?
Yeah, how far back, like, at what point did he really begin to understand it? Like, is there a particular video that you can remember back in the day that kind of had the light bulb go on for you, or that you thought was a big turning point for what they were trying to do?
You know what? It wasn't a turning point. I was born this way. I knew coming out of the womb, like, so when I got, it was always a plan for me, like, say it again?
No, go ahead.
It was always a plan for me. I plotted from, like, once I found out what I wanted to do in college, that was my plan. Like, my whole plan was to infiltrate. So it wasn't one particular thing. I came in from day one. It's just what I did is I know my energy and strength, so I just humbled myself in the sense of just being quiet, and I sat and I listened. And for whatever reason in that industry, like, every white person would just tell me anything I wanted to know. Anything I wanted to know. It was amazing. I would just ask a simple question. They would just spill the beans and just tell me what was what. I mean, I had, you know, a lot of those older Jews wanted to attempt to take me under their wing, but I don't do that. I don't do mentors, especially if I'm stronger than you. There's no way that I could, like, how can you be my teacher? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think you'll teach me a savage, like, of savage mentality, but I can do that on my own. So I was fortunate that I always knew what time it was. So it was never like a light went off. There was a light that went on when I realized that they were sabotaging me. You know, but as far as the message, no, I was always like that from day one.
Some kind of sabotage.
When you say sabotage, like them sabotaging the work.
I mean, when you reach a point, like, probably the worst thing I did was bring my former best friend into that industry. And I mean, him and I were different dudes. I just didn't know that he would get caught up, and it's like sabotage in the sense of my best friend is working for the president, and he's coming to me asking me things about what I'm doing, and because of my best friend, I'm telling him. I'm not thinking he's going back, but yet he would go back, you know, and tell the president, or they would give me a show that they would hope would fail. And then when it didn't fail, it got high ratings, they would kill the show. Same thing with like Little X. Him and I had a project called In My Lifetime that he invested quite a nice beat to change behind. And the president found out about it through my best friend. He sent one of the BT PR people to come to me and tell me that they were going to give me money to shoot a pilot, but he didn't already know that I was in contact with the LA offices, and they was like, we don't have the money, and Little X's show is a little too ambitious for BT right now. And he would have her coming to me, and the president would find out what I was doing, and he took my script and told me, don't worry about it, you know, I'm gonna make sure that you guys get this going. And he trashed it. And that's what destroyed me and Little X's rapport, because X didn't know this was going on. And one day he comes to me, he's like, yo, you know, I guess someone got in his ear, and he says he's feeling a little funny about his investment. You know, so it's things like that you have to deal with. It's like, you know, there's people that I've never lied or stolen or cheated on that will tell you negative things about me only because that's what they're told to say. And this is real, like, it's real, like files come up missing. Crazy stuff that would make you think you're going crazy. So sometimes, you know, when y'all see the Cat Williams and it seems like he's out there bugging, he probably really is going through stuff. He probably really is coming home and seeing stuff in his home missing, or, you know, having people that was close to him. Nothing to make you go crazier than someone that you've broken bread with that'll come in your home and steal from you or disrespect you. Like, you know, that'll make any person go nut all crazy. So a lot of times when we hear entertainers that seem to be losing it, you know, that's because those type of things that happen outside of the ones that are under my control. You know, so that was real sabotage going on, like real life. The one thing that worked in my favor is that in the entertainment industry, no one cares about BET. Like, if I go to NBC, they could care less. Most of them don't even know that there's a station called BET. So that was my saving grace. But within music television, I'll never make another dollar, ever. Ever, 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 ever. And I've been told that to my face. So, you know, that's what I mean when I see sabotage.
Wow.
Talk about the book. And what the book's about and how people can get the book and all that.
And I think that would be good, a little self-promotion, right? Well, the book is entitled BET and Me. It's a book that deals with, say that again?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. The book is entitled BET, D. Brad, and Me. The book deals with mythology and symbolism and how it is used in popular culture as a way for society to view itself. I think it's probably one of the only in-depth studies that you see of popular culture, hip-hop culture, that someone has used psychology, because I really did. I had to do research. I speak about the boule, which is heavy in politics, religion, and entertainment. You know, a lot of people don't know that there's a group of people that study more science, but they ain't down with the people. And that's that, you know, I call them the W.E.B. Du Bois talented 10th. And to prove my point, I dare you to name me more than 10% of the rappers that you see every day. 10% of the actors that call themselves, you know, African Americans. And it's only the 10%. It's the same 10% all the time. And I've broken bread with some of these people. And that boule is legitimate. So I wrote about that. I wrote about the dealing with psychology. I wrote about Edward Bernays. I wrote about a lot of the irony is, throughout my journey and walk, my biggest supporters have been the actual people whose livelihoods I speak out against. It wasn't the conscious community in New York that supported my book the most. It was these actors, the rappers. It wasn't the conscious community in New York City that promoted my book. No, it was, you know, I've had, you know, women from the Basketball Wives tweeting about my book, which is like, they're on television, some of the most brain dead people you want to meet, still think you meet, but no, I've had it, I can show y'all on Twitter where people have called me like, yo, look, there's this woman, that woman, just a minute ago on Media Takeout, they had her acting a fool. I've had rappers, I've had, some of these same people that we would think that we're talking about that are ignorant that will come and say, hey, yo, I just read this book. I've had athletes, so a lot of my life is in that book. My daughter's godmother's a working actress. She has it showing it. Matter of fact, she's from Toronto. Her name is Melanie Nichols King. That's who actually calling me right now, but I can't answer. Her name is Melanie Nichols King. She's from Toronto. She's my daughter's godmother. My daughter's other godmother is the I hate calling old school. Is a rapper Nikki D, Daddy's little girl. So that's what that book deals with a lot of, and I was able to compile a lot of these stories in this, and I think everybody would enjoy it. I attempt to add humor to it. So again, it's called B.E.T. D. Brad and Me, and it's available on Amazon, Kindle, it's on Lulu. I never promote these books because I forget all the time. And like I said, it deals with mythology and symbolism and how it is used in modern television to sway how the masses of society view themselves. And this has been going on in America probably since the 30s. And as we see today, it works. It definitely works. And I ask everybody to forgive me if I'm a little disjointed. It's been a while. I never do Skype lectures, and I'm so used to teaching performing arts for my children that I'm a little bit out of practice, so forgive me if I'm a little rusty with y'all. If I'm a little choppy.
You're all right, you're good. What about the Dave Chappelle working with him and everything that went on with him and what you learned from that experience and what and his experience, like the impact that it's had on even that avenue or that genre of entertainment with him, jumping ship and other people taking the horn.
Yeah, I was on Chappelle's show right before when it was brand new and nobody really knew what to expect of it. But the moment, I'm an energy sensitive person, so the moment I walked on set, I felt this swell of energy, but I didn't know what it was. But I liked Dave Chappelle's work from when I was in college years before that. I just didn't know. I couldn't understand why he couldn't cross over to his people. White audience love Dave Chappelle, but he couldn't cross over to his people. But I was a stand-in, and I would do a lot of the rehearsals for him. And the first thing I saw was that these white people just like laughing at him and anybody that looked like him, because they would laugh at me like I was Dave Chappelle, and I'm not a comedian. There was a lot of pressure on him. Like in the very beginning when the show started, it was like, hey Dave, get yourself on set, boy, get over here. Then it started making money. It was Mr. Chappelle, are you ready to go on set? You know, it was like those Jewish money lenders in the entertainment industry are serious about their money. So when Chappelle's show started making money, they were on this dude's neck. And I saw him literally just day by day. I saw the stress of, you know, his wife was pregnant at the time. So anybody, you know, who's going through pregnancy on both sides, you know, that's stressful. Then he comes in on set and he has to be more and more risque. What most of the Chappelle Show fans don't know is most of the more racially charged skits were written by his white counterparts, Neil. And I remember it got to a point that I called my mother and I said, hey Mom, like, I can't believe some of the stuff that Dave is doing on the show. And, you know, it was getting to me as a conscious dude, like, yo, bro, you would do this? You know, you would write a skit like this about these black people? And my mother told me, like, boy, that is called Dave Chappelle Show, not your show. So she was like, just take your conscious cap off when you go to work and just go. And I was like, you know what, you're right. So every day, I literally would have to just become totally unconscious of who I was because of the shenanigans that would be going on. And what was interesting is that I think Dave knew, because Dave is very conscious. Like his mother, I don't know if many of y'all know that, but his mother instituted the first Africana Studies program in a college in the United States. And his father is like a doctorate of something African, something or another. So he knows who he is. He knows about his Moorish legacy. He knows all this. So on the low, I've always kind of taken credit for him feeling the pressure a little bit more because he knew that I knew. And as an actor, I was an actor as well at the time, and his casting director saw me in a play and really liked me. He used to tell Dave all the time, like, you know, you need to get this guy on your show. And even Charlie Murphy used to kind of be like, yo, but Dave knew that I wasn't an Ashy Larry. So so being on a show like that, he would not put me on. Like he literally would not put me on his show. But he also knew the light that I had as well. And I kind of arrogantly take a little bit of the credit for what helped him kind of shift and change his thought process, because, you know, he would do a skit and everybody would be laughing, and he would just look at me and I would just look at him. Like, you know, give him that look like, you know, that's just funny, that's what you think is funny, you know. And even Neil knew that I knew. So there were times that I would have to, as a set production assistant, go pick up Neil, and him and I wouldn't talk. He would get in, I'd be like, Neil, he'd be like, Dave, and I'd be into that. Because he knew that I thought he was a piece of garbage. Because he was writing all of this material and pushing it on Dave, like, oh, this is funny, this is funny. And then Dave, in the quest of ratings, would do it. But it wore on Dave after a while. So I remember him one day telling me, as I wrote the book, him telling me one day, you know, give me this little speech in the hall. It was just him and I about what, you know, how to write creatively. Like, he's why I could write a sitcom today. But one of the last things he said to me was like, you know, don't ever compromise your integrity. You know, no matter what they say to you, no matter how much money they offer you, don't ever forget in this industry, like, who you are. That's the worst thing you could ever do to yourself. You know, and at the time I took like, all right, because he didn't know that I had already made my move from BET under the same guise. And sure enough, a year later, Dave leave. So I wasn't surprised at all. I actually found the humorous, you know, the humor in it, because he told me that he was going to do that in so many words. And there was a lot of pressure on him, but that's part of that industry. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. I've seen him break people, and, you know, it broke him. And even to this day, the people want him back, but those power don't want him back. That's why you don't see Dave doing anything. And he has a lot of money. Dave came for money. He didn't need Chappelle Show money like that. You know, Dave may have turned down a couple $100 million, but he kept about 50 in his pocket. So, you know, he was good financially. So that was the cool part, where he was better than I was. I was just getting my financial life together, making six figures, you know, and I walked away before all of that came into fruition. Where Dave was a little bit more intelligent. He got the money first and then said, I'm out. So, you know, but yeah, Dave went through a lot. And I will say on a lower level thought process, some of the funniest stuff on Chappelle's show you guys didn't see because it never made it because it was way too raunchy. You know, they really were upset with him when he did a skit where he shot the slave masters. Like, them white people was upset. They were truly like, oh my gosh. And you know, we look around the black folks like, I'm sorry, we're missing something here, but they were really upset about that. So that's like that whole contradiction that we deal with in the entertainment industry as well. You know, we're not going to, we'll see it, Django or Django, whatever his name is, Unchained, but we won't see a movie that Danny Glover's been trying to do about the Haitian Revolution. You know, so that's what the deal is with Chappelle's show. And there's more of it in the book. I get a little bit more in depth in the book as well. And I also wrote about Reginald Hudlin, who I think has relevance because he was the producer behind whatever that movie is, Django Unchained. And I actually, I reached out to him because I don't know, you guys let me know, but I thought that I heard quite a bit of Moorish code talk, and I thought that I saw a lot of Moorish symbolism, and I reached out to, say that again?
No, go ahead, yo.
And I reached out to him, and I asked, and I kind of slid that to him, and he, in so many words, that was his intent, that some of what he was doing was much, you know, what we were saying earlier about like with Heavy D and them, but the problem is, in the States, most of these people missed it, that he was trying to get their attention.